Welcome back to She Rises Daily, Emerging You in 10. I'm your host, DocShellie, here to bring you your daily dose of inspiration, empowerment, and growth. Have you ever stopped doing something for a little while and then found it weirdly difficult to start again? Maybe you were exercising consistently, writing, reading, working on a project, keeping up with friends, doing something for your business, and then life happened, or you traveled, work got crazy, someone needed you, you got tired, your routine changed, or maybe you just stopped doing the thing. No dramatic reason, and suddenly something that used to be relatively easy to do feels enormously difficult to restart. So you think, what happened to my motivation? Why can't I get myself back into this? If this really mattered to me, wouldn't I want to do it? Maybe. I think sometimes we're diagnosing the wrong problem. You may not have lost your motivation. You may have lost your momentum, and those are two very different things. Motivation is your desire to do something, and momentum is what happens when doing it has become part of your movement. Think about something you do consistently. Once you're in rhythm, every repetition requires a little less negotiation. Tuesday builds on Monday. This week's workout builds on last week's workouts. The next page builds on the page you wrote yesterday. You don't have to continually generate movement from zero. You're already moving. Then something interrupts the pattern. Now the next action isn't another step. It becomes a restart. And restarting requires more energy because you have to overcome inertia again. That doesn't necessarily tell you anything about how much you care. Difficulty restarting is not proof that you've lost interest. Sometimes it's simply proof that you are standing still. We make restarting harder by comparing it to where we left off. Here's where we really get ourselves. We don't restart where we are. We try to restart where we were. If you were working out 5 days a week, you think getting back on track means 5 days a week right now. If you were writing every morning, you think restarting means rebuilding that entire routine. If you are highly productive on a project, you expect yourself to immediately return to that level of output. So the first step becomes enormous. And then we avoid it because we're not really asking ourselves to start. We're asking ourselves to resume at full speed. Those are different requests. You don't have to return to your previous pace on day one. You need enough movement to create a day two. I see this in coaching all the time. Someone will tell me some version of, I was doing so well, and then I got off track. And almost immediately, they'll describe this elaborate plan for getting back on track. Tomorrow, they're going to get up early, they're going to exercise, they're going to meal prep, they're going to catch up on everything, they're going to reorganize their calendar, and apparently by Thursday, they're going to be an entirely new person. So I'll sometimes ask, what's the smallest thing you could do that would make you feel like you've started again? Not get entirely caught up, not get back to where you were, not completely consistent, just started. Maybe it's 10 minutes. Maybe it's one email, one page, one walk, one conversation. Because the goal of the first step isn't to recover all of your lost momentum. The goal is just to create a little momentum. Stop making yourself pay a penalty for the pause. This is where restarting becomes unnecessarily emotional. We don't simply begin again. We make ourselves account for the interruption first. I shouldn't have stopped. I've lost so much progress. I was doing so well. Now I have to start all over. And suddenly, the restart comes with shame, disappointment, and a full internal performance review. You don't need any of that in order to begin. You don't have to punish yourself back into consistency. You don't have to earn the right to restart by sufficiently regretting that you stopped in the first place. The pause already happened. The only useful question now is, what would help me move again? That's it. Momentum is built forward. It is not recovered by going backwards. I think this is a big shift for people. When we say, I need to get back on track, we're looking backwards. We're looking back to the routine, back to the pace, back to the version of ourselves who was doing it consistently. But maybe you don't need to go back. Maybe you build from here, exactly where you are. Your life might be different now. Your capacity might be different. Maybe your priorities have shifted. That old routine, maybe it doesn't fit anymore. So don't ask only, how do I get back to what I was doing? Ask, what would consistency look like from where I am right now? Because you're not trying to recover an old version of momentum. You're creating new momentum for the life you're actually living. Here's your reflection question. What have you been telling yourself you need to get back to? And what would it look like to simply begin again from where you are? And your power thought. The goal of the first step isn't to recover all your lost momentum. It is to create some momentum. You are going to lose momentum sometimes because you are human. Life has interruptions. Priorities shift. Routines get broken. You will take some intentional breaks and some decidedly unintentional breaks. None of that means you failed. And none of it requires some dramatic comeback. Start small, start differently, start imperfectly, but start from here. Because momentum does not care how long you've been standing still, it only needs movement. Think of one thing you've been meaning to restart, and then forget about completely back on track. Ask yourself, what is the smallest action that would allow me to say I've begun again? Do that, and let tomorrow build on today. Thank you for joining me for another episode of She Rises Daily, Emerging You in 10. If today's episode made you think of someone who's been waiting to make their grand, triumphant return to something instead of simply taking one tiny step back toward it, please send this episode their way. Until next time, remember, you don't need to catch up. You don't need to recreate who you were before the pause. You just need enough movement to begin building momentum. Start where you are.